What is gaming? It's a question that sounds simple, but the more you think about it, the harder it becomes to answer. To some people, games are just entertainment, something you pay after work, something you pick up for an hour before bed, a way to relax, laugh with friends, or pass the time. To others, they're a waste of time, a distraction, a hobby that people are expected to grow out of. And then there are people who see games as something more, not because games replace reality, but because sometimes they help us understand reality just a little better. Gaming has become one of the biggest forms of entertainment in human history, bigger than film, bigger than music. Millions of people spend thousands of hours exploring worlds that don't exist, meeting characters who were never real, and feeling emotions created by lines of code. That sounds strange when you say it out loud. How can something that isn't real make us laugh? How can fictional people make us cry? How can a digital landscape leave memories that stay with us for years? Maybe it's because games don't just tell stories, they let us live in them. And that's where today comes in, the game, Red Dead Redemption 2. On the surface, it's a western, it's cowboys, it's outlaws, horse riding, land of America, land of the free, beautiful landscape. But underneath all of that is one of the most human stories ever told in a video game. It's a story about loyalty, about regret, about change, and about the inevitable march of time. Most importantly, it's a story about becoming a better person before it's too late. That's something everyone understands, even people who've never picked up a controller. Throughout this video, while we ride across the American frontier, hunt animals, complete mission, and simply exist in one of the most detailed worlds ever created, I want to talk about something much bigger than this game. I want to talk about gaming itself, why it matters, why millions of people love it, why others don't understand it, and why both sides actually make some good points. Because gaming isn't perfect. No hobby is. There are genuine dangers, and if we are to have an honest conversation, we should talk about both. Growing up, many of us were told that games rot your brain. Don't sit too close to the screen. Your brain is shrinking, your brain will get smaller. They make you lazy, they encourage violence. One game always comes to mind. People hated GTA San Andreas because of, unquote, the violence in it. They also said they are just another screen keeping us away from the real world. For years, this was the public image of gaming. Even now, some people still believe it. But if games were really nothing more than mindless entertainment, why do universities study them? Why are psychologists researching them? Why do military organizations use simulations? Why are surgeons trained using game-like systems? Why do schools increasingly use game mechanics to help students learn? The truth is, games have evolved, and so our understanding of them has also evolved. They're no longer just toys, they're interactive experiences, they are social spaces, they are works of art. Some games are silly, some games are competitive, some are terrifying, some are deeply emotional. And some, like Red Dead Redemption 2, asks surprisingly mature questions. Questions like, do people truly change? Does doing one good thing erase years of bad choices? Is loyalty always a virtue? What does it mean to leave something behind that matters? Those aren't gaming questions, these are human questions. That's why stories like Arthur Morgan's resonate with so many people. Because beneath the cowboy hat is someone wrestling with guilt, trying to decide who he wants to be before his story ends. You don't need to have lived in the Wild West to understand that feeling. We've all made mistakes. We've all wished we've done something differently. We've all wondered if people can change. Great stories don't transport us to another world just for the spectacles. They bring us back to our own lives with a different perspective. And that's exactly what games can do at their best. Of course, not every game aims for that. Sometimes you just want to race cars, sometimes you want to build cities, sometimes you want to jump online with friends after a long day and laugh at complete nonsense. And honestly, that's important too. We often feel like every hobby needs to justify itself. Books have to educate us, movies have to inspire us, music has to mean something, gaming gets judged the same way. But sometimes the value of entertainment it's simply that it gives us room to breathe. Life is stressful. People work long hours, students deal with exams, parents barely find time for themselves. An hour spent exploring a virtual world isn't necessarily wasted. Sometimes it's exactly what someone needs to recharge. There's a quote that says, "We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. We take things too seriously." Whether that quote is actually true or not, because I can't really quote it, I can't find who said it, but that's not the point. The point is that play is part of being human. Children play naturally. Adults often forget how and we become more like robots. Games remind us that curiosity, imagination, and challenge don't disappear once we're older. They simply change. Instead of pretending the floor is lava, we survive against impossible odds. Instead of climbing trees, we climb mountains. We experience them through worlds crafted by hundreds of artists, musicians, programmers, writers, and designers working together. Gaming is one of the few mediums where all forms of art meet: music, architecture, writing, acting, animation, photography, psychology, history. Everything comes together just to create something interactive. Something only exists because the player is there. Unlike a film where every viewer watches the exact same story, games ask something from us. They ask us to participate, to make choices, to explore, to fail again, to fail again. Games like Elden Ring make you fail and fail more, to keep trying again. That's what makes them unique. That's why talking about gaming is really talking about people. Because every game is ultimately about the relationship between the world that's created and the person holding the controller. So as we continue riding through the frontier of Red Dead Redemption 2, let's look beyond the gunfight and the horses. Let's talk about why games have become more of one of the art forms defining the 21st century, and why they are far more important than many people realize. If you've never played a video game before, it's easy to assume they're all about fiction. Shoot the enemy, complete the mission, get the highest score, win. And why some games are exactly that. Reducing gaming to a competition is a bit like saying every film is an action movie or every book is a thriller. The medium is simply too broad. Video games have grown into one of the most ambitious forms of storytelling we've ever created, because they don't just ask you to watch a story unfold, they ask you to participate in it. That's an important distinction. When you watch a film, you're an observer. When you read a novel, you're imagining events through someone else's world. But in a game, your decisions, your pace, your curiosity shape the experience. Even when the story itself is linear, the journey feels personal because you're the one walking through it. That's one of the reasons Red Dead Redemption 2 feels so different. It doesn't rush you. It's in fact one of the slow burns in gaming history. So many complaints like, "Oh, it's too slow for me. I need something fast." Modern games often rush and reward speed. Get to the next objective, unlock the next weapon, complete another challenge. Red Dead does almost the opposite. It encourages you to slow down, to ride instead of fast travel, to watch the sunrise, to listen to deep conversations around camp, to notice the wildlife, to appreciate silence. That sounds simple, but it's surprisingly rare. And from personal gameplay, When I found out something about Arthur, I had to slow down. I couldn't continue. Most entertainment is about trying to grab your attention every second. This game is confident enough to let you breathe. And because of that, the world begins to feel believable. Not because it's realistic in every tiny detail, although it certainly is, but because it feels alive. People have routines. Animals behave naturally. Weather changes the atmosphere. Towns grow. Characters remember what you've done. The world doesn't just exist for you. It feels like it would even continue if Arthur wasn't there. That indeed is a remarkable achievement. It's easy to forget how many creative disciplines come together to make something like this possible. Every mountain had to be designed. Every line of dialogue had to be written. Every musical cue had to be composed. Every facial expression had to be animated. Every sound, from the crunch of snow beneath your boots to the distant howls of wolves, had to be recorded or recreated by someone. Hundreds of artists, musicians, programmers, actors, writers, and designers spent years building a world that players might only spend a few minutes exploring. That's art. Not because it's expensive, not because it's technically impressive, but because it was created to make people feel something. One of the most fascinating things about games is that emotion often comes from interaction rather than dialogue. Think about riding your horse across camp. Nothing dramatic is happening, nobody's talking, there isn't a huge cinematic moment. Yet somehow those quiet rides become some of the most memorable parts of the experience. Why? Because your mind has room to wander. You're not being told what to think, you're simply existing inside another world. And there's something strangely peaceful about that. In many ways, games can achieve something that films and books can't. They can create memories that feel like your own. You remember getting lost in the forest. You remember barely surviving a dangerous encounter. You remember discovering a hidden camp in the middle of nowhere. Even though those moments were designed by developers, they still feel personal because you experienced them yourself. That's the magic of interactivity. It blurs the line between storyteller and audience. Another reason RDR stands out is its confidence and subtlety. Arthur Morgan isn't introduced as a perfect hero. He's flawed, deeply flawed. He's loyal to people who don't always deserve it. He makes questionable decisions. He carries guilt. He struggles with the changing world around him. That complexity makes him believable, makes him real. Because real people aren't entirely good or entirely bad. We're a mixture of strengths and weaknesses. The game understands that. Instead of asking, can Arthur save the world? It asks something much more interesting. Can Arthur save himself? That's a question with no easy answer, and it's one of many players quietly think about long after they finish the game. Great stories don't always provide solutions. Sometimes they simply help us ask better questions. Gaming also has an incredible ability to create empathy. When you're controlling a player for dozens of hours, you naturally begin to understand your perspective. You celebrate their victories. You feel the weight of their mistakes. You start caring about fictional people as if they were real. Some critics argue that games can't be art because they're interactive. Ironically, that's exactly what makes them art. Every artistic medium has expanded by becoming more interactive with its audience. Theater invites a live emotional connection. Books invite imagination. Music invites interpretation. Games invite participation. Of course, not every game is trying to tell a profound story, and that's perfectly fine. Art doesn't have to be serious to have value. A comedy is still art. A cartoon is still art. A racing game that simply makes people smile after a difficult day has value too. Entertainment itself has value. We sometimes forget that. There's a tendency to measure everything by productivity. If something isn't making money, teaching a lesson, or improving a skill, people assume it's been wasted. But humans have always needed stories. We've always needed music. We've always needed games. Thousands of years ago, people gathered around campfires to tell stories. Today, many of us gather online or around a console to experience them together. The technology has changed. The human need hasn't. And perhaps that's why games have become so important. Not because they replace books, not because they replace films, but because they offer something neither of those mediums can. They let us step into another person's shoe, not just as spectators, but as participants. For a little while, we stop being ourselves. We become explorers. We become survivors. We become pilots. We become detectives. We become outlaws. And when the best games are over, we often come back with a slightly different understanding of ourselves than when we started. That's not just entertainment. That's the power of storytelling in its most interactive form. Why do we play games? What's the psychology behind gaming? There's a common misconception about gaming. People often assume that we play games because they help us escape reality. And while that's certainly part of the story, it isn't the whole picture. The truth is that humans have always searched for challenges long before consoles, computers, and even electricity. People invented games. Chess, one of my personal favorites. It's a game you love, it's a game that can also drive you crazy. The wins, the losses, the minor details you missed, the mistakes. Checkmate. And it's over. We invented card games, sports, board games, puzzles. Every civilization in history created ways to play. Not because survival depended on it, no, but because something inside us enjoys testing our minds. Games provide structure. They give us goals, rules, obstacles, and perhaps most importantly, they give us feedback. In real life, progress is often not inevitable. Progress is often invisible. You might spend months learning a new language before you notice improvements. You could work for years before earning a promotion. You might exercise every week and unfortunately still feel like nothing is changing. Life is slow. And it's fine to take it slow sometimes. It's fine to slow down. But games are different. You complete a challenge, you level up, you solve a puzzle, door opens, you defeat a difficult enemy, you earn better equipment. Your effort is rewarded almost immediately. Constant feedback is incredibly satisfying because our brains naturally respond to progress. It's one of the reasons gaming can feel so engaging. Every small victory tells us you're getting better. And honestly, everyone likes feeling competent. That doesn't mean games are manipulating us. It means they understand something fundamental about human motivation. We enjoy learning. We enjoy improving. We enjoy overcoming obstacles that once seemed impossible. Think back to the first time you struggled with a difficult boss fight. Maybe you failed 7 times or 20 times. I, for one, failed a lot of times in the drone mission in Vice City. I failed a lot of time trying to catch up the train in San Andreas. And I can remember Big Smoke saying all you had to do was drive CJ. I failed a lot of times in that game. But then when you overcome it once, you feel elated. You feel like you accomplished something. You feel like you just got to the moon. But yes, you did fail a lot of times to get there. Eventually, you stopped failing and something clicked. You learned the attack patterns. You reacted a little faster. You stayed calm. And when you finally won, the satisfaction wasn't just because the boss was defeated. It's because you had changed. You became better at the game. That's a powerful feeling. What's interesting is that Red Dead Redemption 2 approaches the idea differently. It isn't constantly throwing impossible challenges at the player. Instead, It rewards patience, observation, curiosity. The game encourages you to pay attention, to notice animal tracks, listen to conversation, explore abandoned buildings, slow down enough to see the details that many players would otherwise miss. Two people can play the same Red Dead Redemption 2 and there are so many random encounters, and you'll be like, hold on, when did this happen? Why didn't I see it? It's because sometimes you need to slow down enough to see the details. You need to just ride along somewhere to see the random encounters. Because sometimes discovery isn't enough. Sometimes simply existing in a beautiful world is rewarding in itself. Psychologists often talk about something called flow. It's a mental state where you're completely absorbed in what you're doing. You lose track of time. You're focused, not bored, not overwhelmed, just fully present. Think about the last time you started playing for what felt like 30 minutes, only to realize 3 hours had passed. That's flow. And why people often associate it with gaming, it can almost happen at any other event, it can happen anywhere. Playing an instrument, painting, cooking, writing, sports especially. Anything that perfectly balances challenge with skill can create that experience. Games just happen to be exceptionally good at it. When designed well, they constantly adjust the pace. Moments of tension are followed by quiet exploration. Action is balanced with reflection. Difficulty rises as your abilities improve. That's one of the reasons games can feel so immersive. They're simply not just entertaining you, they're asking for your full attention. Of course, that's also where one of gaming's biggest dangers begin. Anything capable of creating flow can become difficult to step away from. That's not unique to games. People lose themselves into books, television, work, social media, even exercise. The issue isn't the activity itself, it's balance. Gaming becomes unhealthy when it stops being something you enjoy and starts becoming something you feel unable to stop. There's an important difference. For most people, gaming is a hobby. For a small percentage, it can become an unhealthy coping mechanism, especially when life outside the screen feels overwhelming. Games offer clear goals, predictable rules, a sense of achievement. Real life often doesn't do that. So it's understandable and relatable why some people retreat into virtual worlds. But understanding something isn't the same as ignoring its risks. Healthy gaming adds to life, unhealthy gaming replaces it. The difference is subtle, but it's incredibly important. Gaming should never cost you your relationships, your health, your education, or your future. At the same time, we shouldn't assume that spending time gaming is automatically wasted. People spend entire weekends watching television without anyone questioning it. Some people can binge 10 episodes of a series and that's considered relaxing. Spend 10 hours exploring a game, however, people suddenly ask whether you become addicted. It's a strange double standard, but it exists. Both are equally forms of entertainment. The key question isn't how many hours did you spend, it's what did these hours cost you? If gaming helps you unwind after work, keeps you connected with friends across the world, introduces you to unforgettable stories, or simply gives you something to look forward to after a difficult day, then those hours weren't necessarily wasted. Time enjoyed isn't time automatically lost. That's something I think we forget. The healthiest relationship with gaming isn't one where games become your entire identity. It's one where they become part of your balanced life, something that inspires you rather than isolates you, something that enriches your experience instead of replacing them. Ironically, Red Dead Redemption 2 understands this lesson better than many players realize. Throughout its history, it quietly asks a question that extends far beyond the American frontier. How should we spend the limited time we're given? Should we chase money? Should we chase power? Should we chase loyalty or freedom? Or should we simply try to become better people before our journey ends? Those questions aren't about cowboys. they're about us. And maybe that's why gaming resonates so deeply. Not because it's an escape from life, but because at its very best, it gives us another way to think about life itself. Gaming matters more than we think. When people ask whether gaming is good or bad, they're usually asking the wrong questions. Almost nothing is entirely one or the other. Reading can expand your mind, but you can also use books to avoid dealing with reality. Exercise is one of the healthiest things you can do, but too much of it can lead to injury. Even work sometimes, we often associate with responsibility, becomes unhealthy if it consumes every other part of your life. Gaming is no different. Its value depends on how you use it. And when used well, it offers far more than many people realize. One of the biggest benefits is something that's surprisingly difficult to find in everyday life: a safe place to fail. Think about school, for example. If you fail an exam, the consequences can feel enormous. At work, making a mistake can affect your career, maybe end it completely. In life, failure often comes with embarrassment, disappointment, even regret. Games are different. Failure isn't the end, it's part of the journey. You miss the jump, you lose the fight, you restart, you try again. You make a bad decision, you learn from it. Without realizing it, games teaches persistence. They quietly encourage your mind with a mindset that says, you haven't succeeded yet, but you can. That tiny word "yet" makes all the difference. Some of the hardest games ever made have deployed loyal communities because players understand something important. A challenge isn't there to stop you, it's there to help you grow. Every defeat teaches you something new, every mistake becomes information, and eventually, what once felt impossible becomes routine. That's a lesson that reaches far beyond gaming. Life rarely rewards people who never fail. It rewards people who keep going even after they do. Games allow us to practice that mindset in a way that's engaging instead of discouraging. Then there's creativity. When most people hear the word creative, they imagine painting, writing novels, or composing music. But creativity also means solving problems in original ways, finding new approaches, experimenting, thinking outside the obvious solution. Games encourage that constantly. Whether you're building an elaborate settlement, creating the perfect strategy, or simply approaching a mission differently from someone else, you're exercising creative thinking. Even in a game as grounded as RDR2, players create their own stories. One person spends hours hunting legendary animals, another becomes fascinated by photography using the in-game camera. Someone else ignores the main story for days, choosing instead to explore forgotten cabins, hidden caves, and quiet forests. This is where I fall in. I spend hours just wandering the open world, even when there are missions available. Yes, we're all playing the same game, but each experience is completely different. That's because games don't just provide stories, they create space for personal stories to emerge. Another benefit, one that honestly gets overlooked: social connection. For years, gaming carried the stereotype of being lonely, a teenager sitting in a dark room disconnected from the world. But that image doesn't match reality anymore. Today, gaming connects people across countries, cultures, and generations. Friends who move to different cities meet online every Friday night. Brothers separated by thousands of miles still laugh together over a headset. Parents play with their children. Couples explore virtual worlds together. It takes two. Some people even meet lifelong friends through games. In many cases, gaming isn't replacing social interaction, it is the social interaction. Of course, nothing replaces spending time face to face with people, but that doesn't make online friendship less meaningful. Human connection isn't defined by distance, it's defined by shared experiences, and gaming create those experiences remarkably well. One of the things I appreciate most about RDR2 is how it rewards curiosity. The game never forces you to discover everything. It simply leaves opportunity waiting for players who choose to explore. You might stumble across a stranger with an unforgettable story. Find an abandoned building that hints at lives long gone, or discover something mysterious that the game never fully explains. This moment reminds us of something we started to lose in the age of constant notification, curiosity. Not everything needs an objective marker. Not every question needs an immediate answer. Sometimes joy comes from wandering, from getting lost, from not having all your answers given, from following your instinct instead of a map. There's something strangely peaceful about that. It's uncomfortable, but letting your mind wander, not having all your answers, is also quite rewarding. Gaming gives you something that's becoming increasingly rare: undivided attention. Think about how often we divide our focus. We're watching a series while scrolling through our phones, listening to music while answering messages, walking while checking emails every few minutes. Our attention is constantly fragmented, constantly being pulled in every direction. A great game asks something different. It asks you to be present, to pay full attention, to listen, to observe, to react. For an hour or two, your mind isn't bouncing between 20 different things. It's focused on one experience. Ironically, that's something many people struggle to achieve in everyday life. Another benefit is empathy. That might sound like an unusual word in a discussion about a video game, but think about what games actually ask us to do. They place us in someone else's position. Sometimes that's a soldier, a warrior, a detective, an explorer. Sometimes, as in this game, is an outlaw trying to reconcile the life he's lived with the person he hopes he can still become. When we spend dozens of hours with the character, we begin to understand them. Not because we agree with every decision they make, but because we've seen the world through their eyes. Stories have helped humans develop empathy. Games simply do it again in a uniquely interactive way, and perhaps that's its greatest strength. They don't tell us what someone feels, they invite us to experience it, see through their eyes, know why they did what they did. This doesn't mean every game changes your life. No, most games won't, and that's fine. Most games are just for fun, for the moment, nothing thought-provoking or profound. Just as not all books change your perspective, not all films change your perspective. But every so often, one comes along that stays with you, not because of incredible graphics, not because of exciting gameplay, but because it quietly changes the way you think. For me, and many players alike, RDR2 is one of those games, not because it's perfect. No game is. But because it understands something deeply human. That life isn't measured by how fast we move through it. It's measured by the moments we choose to notice, the conversations we remember, the people we help, the mistakes we learn from, and the legacy we leave behind. Perhaps that is why this game continues to resonate years after its release. It reminds us that slowing down isn't always falling behind. Sometimes slowing down is the one way to appreciate the journey. And maybe that's a lesson worth carrying along with us after we put the controller down.